For no reason at all, the millionaire fired the nanny, and what his children said changed everything. The impossible goodbye. The sound was unbearable. Clack, clack, clack. The cheap plastic wheels of the blue suitcase rattled against the pristine cobblestones of the city's most exclusive street. A rhythmic, dry noise that seemed to count the seconds of a tragedy. Sarah didn't look back. She couldn't. She felt that if she turned her head, even a millimeter, her heart would finally shatter into 1,000 pieces on that hot asphalt. The most humiliating thing wasn't the old suitcase, or the beige canvas bag hanging from her left shoulder, heavy as a millstone. The worst were the gloves, those cursed, bright, ridiculous yellow cleaning gloves, which still had soap suds drying on their wrists. They hadn't even given her time to take them off. The order had been absolute, sharp as a scalpel. "Get out of my house now," and Sarah, with the dignity she had left, had obeyed, dragging her entire life down the street, her hands sweating inside the latex, feeling dirtier than the trash she used to take out. The afternoon sun beat down heavily, casting long shadows between the 3-story mansions and the golf course-like lawns. It was a paradise for the rich, but for her, at that moment, it was a hostile desert. Her tears fell silently, sliding down her chin and staining the white collar of her blue uniform. "Mama Sarah!" The scream wasn't just a sound, it was an explosion. It shattered the calm of the residential neighborhood, like glass hitting the floor. Sarah froze, the air caught in her throat. She knew those voices. She knew them better than her own breath. They were the voices that woke her every morning asking for chocolate milk. They were the voices that whispered, "I'm scared when there's a storm. Don't go. Wait." Sarah dropped the suitcase handle. Instinct was stronger than the dismissal order. She turned around slowly, and what she saw chilled her blood. There they came, Liam and Noah, her boys. 2 identical, 5-year-olds, dressed in their blue linen shorts and crisp shirts, but with faces disfigured by panic and tears. They ran towards her with outstretched arms, stumbling, desperate, as if they were fleeing a fire. But what made Sarah feel absolute terror wasn't seeing them cry, but seeing them run in the middle of the street, blind to everything but her. And behind them, the image of power turned into helplessness. Mr. Harrison, the owner of that entire empire, the man who moved millions with a phone call, ran after his sons, his face distraught. He was no longer the impeccable magnate in his tailored Italian suit. He was a terrified father. His hands were on his head, his tie flying over his shoulder, and his mouth open in a silent scream of despair. "Liam, Noah, stop!" Mr. Harrison bellowed, his voice broken by effort and fear. "A car's coming! Stop! For God's sake!" But the twins didn't listen. For them, the only danger wasn't a speeding car. The only mortal danger was losing the only woman who had hugged them when their biological mother died. Sarah saw the scene in slow motion, the children running towards her with suicidal devotion, the father running after them, unable to reach them. And in the distance, the roar of an engine approaching around the curve. In that eternal second, under the golden and cruel afternoon light, the fate of 4 people was about to collide. No one in that perfect neighborhood imagined that this heartbreaking scene had begun barely 30 minutes earlier, because of a lie worth more than a person's life. The accusation. 30 minutes earlier, the mansion's library smelled of old leather, mahogany, and money. It was a room designed to intimidate, with 6-foot-high ceilings and bookshelves full of books no one read. Sarah stood in the center of the Persian rug, her gloved hands clasped in front of her white apron, trembling. Across from her was Victoria. Mr. Harrison's fiancée was a woman of glacial beauty, sculpted by surgeries and resentment. She was sitting on the edge of Mr. Harrison's desk, swinging a leg elegantly, holding a glass of white wine as if it were a scepter. She hadn't screamed. Victoria never screamed. Her venom was smooth, administered in lethal doses of calm. "I won't repeat myself, Sarah," Victoria said, looking at her perfect manicure. "My gold watch, the Rolex Mister, Harrison gave me for our engagement. It was on the nightstand. You cleaned the room 10 minutes ago. Now it's gone. Miss Victoria, by the Holy Virgin, please." Sarah's voice trembled, but her eyes were fixed on her accusers. "I cleaned. Yes, I dusted. I changed the sheets, but I didn't touch any jewelry. I've been in this house for 3 years. I've never taken a cent that wasn't mine. Mr. Harrison knows that." Victoria let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Mr. Harrison knows what I tell him to know. You're a nanny, Sarah. You have debts. Your mother is sick back in your hometown, isn't she? Temptation is a very ugly thing." "My need doesn't make me a thief," Sarah replied, straightening her back. Pride was the only thing in her bank account. You can check me. Check my bag. Check my room. I have nothing." At that moment, the double oak doors burst open. Mr. Harrison entered like a hurricane. He was on the phone, his brow furrowed, carrying the stress of a corporate merger that had been keeping him awake for weeks. He abruptly hung up the call and looked at the scene, his fiancée on the verge of tears, fake but convincing, and the nanny pale as a sheet. "What's going on here?" Mr. Harrison asked, with that impatient tone of someone who has no time for domestic problems. I can hear voices all the way down the hall. "Victoria, honey, why are you crying?" Victoria slid off the desk and ran to him, burying her face in his chest. She sobbed dramatically, a perfectly rehearsed sound. "Oh, Alex, it's horrible. I feel so unsafe in my own home." "What happened?" Mr. Harrison stroked Victoria's hair, but his cold eyes fixed on Sarah, seeking an explanation. "The watch, darling," Victoria whispered, looking up with the eyes of a frightened servant. "The anniversary Rolex disappeared. Sarah just left the room, and when I asked her, she became aggressive. She told me I must have lost it." Sarah took a step forward, feeling the injustice burning in her throat. "That's a lie, sir. I never said that. I only said I didn't take it. Sir, you know me. I've cared for Liam and Noah since they were babies. You entrusted their lives to me. Do you think I would steal a watch?" Mr. Harrison closed his eyes and sighed. He was exhausted. He hadn't slept well in months, pressured by investors, and now this. Doubt didn't even cross his mind. For him, the equation was simple. Victoria was his future wife, a woman of his social class, incapable of lying about something so trivial. Sarah was the employee, and employees, in his cynical experience, always ended up failing. Besides, Victoria had been warning him about Sarah for weeks, saying she was lazy, that the children were too attached to her, that she'd seen strange things. The ground was already prepared. Mr. Harrison disengaged from Victoria and walked towards Sarah. His presence was imposing, crushing. "Where is it?" he asked in a low, dangerous voice. "I don't have it, sir. I swear on my life, sir." "Don't swear, Mr. Harrison shouted, slamming his palm on the desk. The sound made Sarah jump. "Don't you dare swear in my house. I'm fed up. Fed up with problems. Fed up with disloyalty. I gave you a job, I gave you a roof, and this is how you repay me, by stealing from the woman who is going to be the mother of my children." "She's not their mother," Sarah murmured, a fatal error fueled by pain. Mr. Harrison's eyes darkened. That phrase touched a raw nerve. He knew the children didn't accept Victoria, and for Sarah to remind him of that at that moment was like a slap in the face. "You're fired," Mr. Harrison decreed. There was no doubt in his voice. It was a final verdict. "Sir, please, the children arrive from school in half an hour. Let me at least say goodbye, explain to them. Don't you dare go near my children." Mr. Harrison pointed an accusing finger at her. "I don't want a thief influencing Liam and Noah more than you already have. Get out now, this instant." "But my things. I have to change my uniform." Sarah looked at her yellow gloves, her blue dress. "Get out like that," Victoria interrupted with a disguised triumphant smile from behind Mr. Harrison's hand. "If we let you go to your room, you'll surely steal something else. We'll mail your old rags to you later." Mr. Harrison nodded, blinded by anger and fatigue, pulled out his wallet, extracted a wad of bills without counting them, and threw them to the floor, at Sarah's feet. The bills fell scattered on the Persian rug. "There's your severance. Take it and disappear. If I see you in this gated community in an hour, I'm calling the police and having you escorted out in handcuffs." Sarah looked at the money on the floor. It was more than she earned in 3 months. She could have picked it up. She needed it, but something inside her, an ancient and powerful force that came from her ancestors, straightened. She looked up and met Mr. Harrison's eyes. There was sadness in her gaze, yes, but no shame. "I don't want your dirty money, Mr. Harrison," she said softly, her voice resonating louder than his shouts. "I hope that watch tells you the exact time when you realize the mistake you're making. Not for me, but for your sons." Sarah turned, picked up her suitcase, which happened to be near the service door. Victoria had made sure everything was ready. She grabbed her bag and left the library. "Mr. Harrison stood gasping, feeling a strange emptiness in his stomach. Victoria immediately hugged him, kissing his cheek. "You did the right thing, my love. You were very brave. Now we'll have peace." But the peace lasted exactly 20 minutes. The time it took for the school bus to screech to a halt in front of the door, and the time it took for 2 children to run into the house shouting, "Sarah! Sarah! Look what we drew!" only to find the sepulchral silence of a soulless house. And then chaos erupted, Victoria's malice. The hallway leading from the library to the imposing main door seemed to have stretched, becoming an endless tunnel of cold marble and empty echoes. Sarah walked with her head held high, though inside her legs trembled like leaves in the wind. The sound of her own footsteps felt alien, distant, as if they belonged to another person, to a condemned woman marching to the gallows. She didn't stop to pick up the money. Those crumpled bills lay scattered on the Persian rug as a final offense, a testament to how little her loyalty was worth to the man she had served with devotion. She pulled her blue suitcase behind her, and her bag was on her shoulder. But what weighed most heavily was the emptiness in her chest. That black hole where seconds before certainty had resided, that she had a home and a family, even if it was borrowed. Just as her gloved hand touched the brass doorknob of the main entrance, she felt a presence behind her. It wasn't Mr. Harrison. The perfume, a cloying mix of imported roses and expensive musk, hit her before the voice did. It was Victoria. "Don't leave so fast, darling," Victoria whispered. Her tone no longer held any of the tearful fragility she had exhibited in the library. Now, it was pure ice, sharp and cutting. Sarah turned slowly. Victoria stood a few feet away, arms crossed, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was no longer pretending. The mask of the perfect fiancé had fallen, revealing the calculating cruelty hidden beneath. "Why?" Sarah asked, her voice broken by disbelief. "Why so much malice, Miss Victoria? I never did anything to you. You have everything. Money, beauty, a good man. Why destroy a simple employee?" Victoria let out a soft, almost inaudible laugh, and took a step forward, invading Sarah's personal space. Her eyes shone with triumphant malice. "Do you think this is about you?" Victoria shook her head, as if speaking to a slow-witted child. "Oh, Sarah, you're so insignificant that you don't even deserve my hatred. This isn't about you, it's about them." With a subtle gesture, Victoria pointed upstairs, towards the children's rooms, which were empty at that moment. The children. Sarah felt a chill. "But they're angels. They're parasites." Victoria spat. Her face contorted into a grimace of genuine disgust. "They're noisy, sticky, and worst of all, they're the living memory of that dead woman, Mr. Harrison's first wife. I don't intend to share my life, my mansion, or my inheritance with two brats who aren't mine. And you were the main problem." Sarah's eyes widened, finally understanding the magnitude of the trap. "I was their protection," Sarah whispered. "Exactly," Victoria nodded, savoring her victory. "As long as you were here acting as a surrogate mother," Mr. Harrison felt calm. "You covered their emotional deficiencies, you cared for them, pampered them, kept them happy. But without you, Sarah, they'll become unbearable, they'll cry, scream, throw tantrums. And Mr. Harrison has no patience. He's a businessman, not a man for diapers or nighttime comforts." Victoria leaned into Sarah's ear, lowering her voice to a poisonous hiss. "Do you want to know what's going to happen now that you cross that door? Tomorrow morning, first thing, Liam and Noah are leaving." "Leaving? Where?" Sarah's heart began to pound. "To a boarding school in Switzerland," Victoria revealed with a cruel smile. "A very strict place, very far away, where they teach discipline and don't bother anyone. I already have the papers ready in Mr. Harrison's study. I just needed an excuse for him to sign without thinking twice. And your theft, darling, was the perfect excuse. The stress of the theft, the disappointment. Tonight, when he's exhausted and furious, I'll tell him that the only solution for the children to be safe and well-educated, away from the influence of thieving maids, is boarding school, and he'll sign." Sarah's world stopped. Switzerland, far from their father, far from their home, far from the only love they knew. Liam and Noah, so small, so sensitive, would die of sadness. Liam had nightmares if a light wasn't left on. Noah was allergic to nuts, and no one but her knew how to check labels properly. "Are you a monster?" Sarah cried, forgetting her position, forgetting her fear. The fury of a lioness mother took hold of her. Sarah tried to get past Victoria to return to the library. She had to tell Mr. Harrison. She had to scream the truth at him, even if they dragged her out. Mr. Harrison, listen to me." Sarah cried with all her might, her voice echoing off the high walls. But Victoria was faster. With surprising force, she pushed Sarah towards the open door, and at that instant, Mr. Harrison appeared at the end of the hall, coming out of the library. "Mr. Harrison," Sarah pleaded, clinging to the doorframe. "It's not about the watch. She wants to send the children to a boarding school. She hates them. Please, listen to me." Mr. Harrison stopped. His face was a mask of stone and disappointment. He looked at Sarah, disheveled, shouting things that made no sense to him. And then he looked at Victoria, who immediately adopted the posture of a frightened victim, clutching her hand to her chest. "Alex, for God's sake!" Victoria cried with a trembling voice. "She's unbalanced. She's threatening me. She says she's going to take the children." The lie was the final blow. Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened. He didn't hear the warning about the boarding school. He only heard the shouts of a woman he had just fired for theft. "Get out of my house," Mr. Harrison bellowed, pointing imperatively at the exit. "And never come back!" "Sir, your children, don't let them take them," Sarah cried one last time, tears burning her eyes. Mr. Harrison advanced with long, furious strides. Sarah instinctively backed onto the porch. "Mr." Harrison reached the door and, without a trace of doubt, without a second's hesitation, he closed it. Slam. The sound of the solid oak door closing was definitive. It was the sound of a life breaking. Sarah heard the dry click of the automatic bolt, activating from inside. She stood there on the immense porch in front of the closed door. The silence of the rich neighborhood enveloped her again. She was alone. She had failed. She looked at her yellow gloves, symbols of her service and now of her disgrace. She grabbed her suitcase with a hand that seemed to have no strength and began to descend the entrance steps, dragging her feet, dragging her soul, as Victoria's plan began to execute itself inside that fortress of lies. The twins escape. 20 minutes later, the yellow school bus screeched to a halt in front of the mansion. The doors opened, and two small, identical figures descended. Liam and Noah. They were happy. Liam held a crumpled crayon drawing in his hand. It was them, their dad, and Sarah, all holding hands under a giant, smiling sun. Noah held a crushed flower he'd picked from the school garden, a gift for his Sarah. "First one to the kitchen gets an extra cookie," Noah cried. And both ran towards the side entrance, the one they always used, because Sarah always left it open for them. They burst into the kitchen, expecting the smell of freshly baked bread or the warm, soap-scented embrace of their nanny. "Sarah, we're here!" Liam shouted, waving his drawing, but only the hum of the refrigerator replied. The kitchen was spotless, cold, empty. There was no snack on the table, no soft music on the radio. "Sarah?" Noah asked, and his smile faded a little. The flower in his hand seemed to wilt instantly. The children exchanged a look. That twin connection, that invisible thread that bound them, vibrated with an alarm signal. Something was wrong. The house felt different. It felt hostile. They tiptoed towards the main foyer. They heard voices coming from the living room. Adult voices. They recognized their father's deep voice and Victoria's shrill tone. They hid behind the spiral staircase railing, crouched like two frightened little animals, and listened intently. "Calm down, my love," Victoria was saying. Her voice sounded relaxed, satisfied. "The worst is over. That woman is gone now. I can't believe she stole from us," Mr. Harrison replied in a tired voice. "I feel like such a fool." "Don't think about it anymore," Victoria interrupted. "Look on the bright side. Now we have a clear path for what we talked about. I already called the director of St. George's Academy in Switzerland. They have 2 openings available for the semester starting next week." Liam's heart stopped. He squeezed Noah's hand so hard, his knuckles turned white. "Switzerland?" Mr. Harrison asked doubtfully. "Victoria, they're so young, just 5 years old. Isn't it too soon?" "Alex, please," Victoria insisted, her tone becoming persuasive, manipulative. "Look at us. We're on the verge of collapse. You work all day. I have my charity commitments and the wedding planning. And without Sarah, who's going to care for them? Another maid who steals from us? Another stranger? In Switzerland, they'll be with the children of European royalty. They'll learn languages, discipline, skiing. It's best for their future. Besides," she paused dramatically, "that way we'll have time for ourselves, for our honeymoon, to start our own family. No burdens from the past." There was a silence, a terrible, heavy silence. Liam and Noah held their breath, waiting for their father to shout, "No," waiting for him to defend their right to be home. "Maybe you're right," Mr. Harrison finally murmured. It was the voice of a defeated man choosing the easy path. "I don't know what to do with them without help. Maybe it's for the best. Prepare the passports," Victoria said triumphantly. "Tomorrow morning, we'll take them to the airport." At the top of the stairs, the twins' world shattered. Sarah was gone. Their father was going to abandon them. The wicked witch had won. Liam looked at Noah. Their eyes were full of tears, but also of desperate determination. They didn't need to speak. They understood each other with just a glance. We have to find Sarah. She's the only one who loves us. She'll save us." They got up silently and ran to their room on the second floor. They closed the door, but knew they couldn't go through the hallway. Victoria and Mr. Harrison were blocking the main exit, and the kitchen was too far away. If they were seen, they would be caught. If they were seen, they would be locked up until sent to that cold place called Switzerland. They ran to the window facing the street. It was locked. Noah, the more impulsive one, tried to open it, but the mechanism was stuck with new paint. "It won't open!" Noah cried, hitting the glass with his small hands. Liam looked out at the street through the glass. In the distance, down the hill, he saw a small figure dressed in blue dragging a suitcase. "There she is!" Liam cried. "It's Sarah! She's leaving!" Panic seized them. If she rounded the corner, they would lose her forever. There was no time to think, no time to look for keys. Liam grabbed the heavy metal lamp from his nightstand. It was an astronaut-shaped lamp Mr. Harrison had given them, but which he never lit. "Stand back!" Liam ordered. With all the strength of a 5-year-old, Liam slammed the metal base against the window glass. Crash. The glass didn't break completely on the first blow. It only fractured like a giant cobweb. Liam hit it again, shouting with frustration and fear. Crash. This time the glass gave way, falling in a shower of glittering fragments onto the front garden and into the room. "Let's go!" Noah cried. They didn't think about the danger. They didn't see the sharp edges remaining in the frame. They only saw freedom and the blue figure moving away. Noah jumped first. As he placed his hands on the frame to push off, a piece of glass cut the palm of his right hand. He cried out in pain, but adrenaline was stronger. He jumped towards the hydrangea bush below. It was a 6-foot fall, but the fear of losing Sarah cushioned the blow. Liam followed. His shirt caught on a glass shard, tearing, and he felt a sharp cut on his forearm, but he didn't stop. He fell onto the damp earth next to his brother. They immediately got up, ignoring the blood that was beginning to stain their clothes, ignoring the pain in their scraped knees. "Run!" they shouted in unison. They bolted from the garden, crossed the wrought iron gate, which luckily had been left ajar by the gardener, and stepped onto the hot pavement of the street. "Mama Sarah!" They cried with lungs that seemed about to burst. It was that cry that alerted Mr. Harrison inside the house. The sound of his children not playing, but screaming in agony. In the street, Sarah stopped. The twins saw her turn, and then they ran faster than ever. They weren't running towards a nanny, they were running towards their lives. They ran with open arms, bleeding, crying, seeking the only refuge they had left in a world that had just betrayed them. And behind them, the mansion door burst open, and Mr. Harrison rushed out, realizing too late that the true treasure of his life was not in the safe, but running barefoot on the hot asphalt, away from him. The revelation, the twist. In the street. The impact was physical, brutal, and charged with desperate tenderness. Sarah had no time to think or evaluate the consequences, or to remember that only a few minutes ago she had been treated like a criminal in that very house. Seeing Liam and Noah running towards her, their faces bathed in tears and stained with blood, her body reacted with the muscle memory of motherhood. She dropped the blue suitcase, which fell with a dull thud on the sidewalk, and dropped to her knees on the scorching pavement. She didn't care about the sharp pain in her kneecaps as they hit the hard cement. Her arms opened instinctively, like the wings of a bird trying to protect its young from an imminent storm. "Children, my children!" Sarah cried, her voice choked by a sob that rose from her chest. The twins collided with her with the force of a small hurricane. They didn't slow down. They threw themselves onto her chest, burying their faces in the starched fabric of her uniform, clinging to her neck, her shoulders, wherever they could hold on to avoid being dragged away by the current of abandonment they felt. "Don't go! Don't leave us!" Noah cried, his high-pitched voice breaking into an unintelligible plea. Sarah enveloped them tightly, closing her eyes as she felt the small bodies tremble violently against hers. But then she felt something wet and sticky on her hands. She opened her eyes, and terror invaded her. Her yellow cleaning gloves, those that represented her inferior status, were turning crimson red. "Blood!" Sarah gasped, separating them a little to examine them. "They're bleeding. My God, what did you do?" Liam had a deep cut on his forearm, a red, open line where his shirt had torn. Noah's hands were full of small cuts, and his knees, scraped from the fall in the garden, were bleeding onto his white socks. "We broke the window," Liam sobbed without letting go, clinging to her apron, as if it were a life raft. "We had to break it to reach you. The door was locked. Dad locked us in." Sarah's heart stopped for an instant. They had hurt themselves for her. They had gone through broken glass just to keep her from leaving. The magnitude of that love struck her harder than any insult from Victoria. She began to cry, mixing her tears with the blood from the wounds she tried to press with her gloved hands to stop the flow. "You're crazy, my loves, you're crazy," Sarah cried, kissing their sweaty heads. "You could have killed yourselves." At that moment, a long, menacing shadow fell over them. The sound of luxurious leather shoes hitting the asphalt frantically stopped right beside them. A man's agitated, furious breathing filled the air. Sarah looked up. Mr. Harrison stood there above them, blocking the sun. His Italian suit was wrinkled, his tie undone, and his face was red with anger, panic, and confusion. But his eyes didn't see the love in that scene. His eyes, poisoned by Victoria's lies, only saw a thief manipulating his children. "Let them go!" Mr. Harrison roared. The shout was so powerful that some neighbors peeked their heads out from behind the curtains of their mansions. "Take your dirty hands off my children." Mr. Harrison bent down violently, trying to pull Noah from Sarah's arms. He grabbed him by the arm, unaware of the boy's injuries in his blind fury. "Come here!" Mr. Harrison shouted, pulling the child. "What have you done to them? Are you kidnapping them? I knew you were a delinquent." "No, sir. Careful," Sarah cried, not to defend herself, but protecting Noah. "You're hurting him. He has glass in his hands." But Mr. Harrison wasn't listening. Adrenaline buzzed in his ears. He saw blood on the woman's uniform, and his mind, predisposed to disaster, imagined the worst. He thought she had hurt them, that she was dragging them away. "Get away from them!" Mr. Harrison pushed Sarah hard on the shoulder. She, being in an unstable kneeling position, fell backward, hitting her hip against the curb of the sidewalk. The children screamed when they saw their nanny fall. "Dad, no!" The cry was unison, heartbreaking. Mr. Harrison managed to get the children to stand behind him, interposing his body between them and Sarah, like a human shield against a mortal threat. He was breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling, looking at the woman on the ground with absolute contempt. "I'll call the police right now," Mr. Harrison hissed, pulling out his phone with trembling hands. "Theft, attempted kidnapping, assault. You're going to rot in jail, Sarah. I swear I'll destroy your life." Sarah, from the ground, took off one of her blood-stained gloves and threw it aside. She didn't try to get up. She just looked at Mr. Harrison with infinite sadness, a sadness so profound that for a second it made the millionaire hesitate. "Look at your hands, sir," Sarah said softly, ignoring the threat of jail. "Look at your children's hands before you call anyone. They're cut. They need a doctor, not a police officer." "Mr." Harrison blinked, confused by her calmness, and looked down at Noah's hands, which he himself was clenching. He felt the sticky dampness, saw the blood, saw the deep cuts caused by the window glass. Parental panic momentarily replaced his fury. "My God," he whispered, letting go of Noah's wrist and seeing it injured. "What happened? What did she do to them?" "She didn't do anything." The shout came from Liam. The Kieiter twin, the one who always hid behind his father's legs, stepped forward. His small fists were clenched, and his face was red with rage. The hidden truth. Time seemed to stand still on that suburban street. The wind stopped moving the leaves of the perfectly manicured trees. Liam, at 5 years old and barely 3 feet tall, stood in front of his father with the ferocity of a giant. Mr. Harrison looked at his son, astonished. Liam never shouted. Liam was the docile one. "Son, come here." "She's dangerous," Mr. Harrison tried to say, extending his hand. "No." Liam pushed his father's hand away with a violent swat. "You're the dangerous one. You and that witch Victoria." The mention of his fiancée's name in that tone, coming from the mouth of an innocent child, was like a bucket of ice water for Mr. Harrison. "Liam, don't disrespect her. She planted the watch," Liam cried. The words shot out like bullets, directly impacting Mr. Harrison's chest. "We saw her, Noah, and I saw her." Mr. Harrison froze. The phone in his hand was still on, ready to dial 911, but his finger paralyzed. He looked at Noah for confirmation. The other twin, who was crying silently while sucking on a cut finger, nodded frantically. "We were playing hide and seek," Noah sobbed, his voice choked. "We were under your bedroom bed. We wanted to scare you when you came in, but Victoria came in." Mr. Harrison felt the ground move under his feet. "What? What are you saying?" Mr. Harrison asked, his voice losing all authority, becoming a hoarse whisper. "She came in alone," Liam continued, angrily wiping his tears, smearing blood and dirt on his face. "Sarah wasn't there. Victoria opened your drawer, took out the gold watch, and laughed. A nasty laugh, Dad. And then she went into Sarah's room and put it in her beige bag. She said, "Goodbye, stupid maid." We heard her. Mr. Harrison's mind tried to reject the information. It couldn't be. Victoria was a high society woman, educated, his fiancée. Why would she do something so low? Why incriminate a humble nanny? You must have seen wrong. Mr. Harrison stammered, trying to cling to his constructed reality. Maybe she was just looking for it. No, Liam insisted, hitting his father's leg with his small fists. She told us she was going to send us to Switzerland. She said Sarah was a nuisance and that we were parasites. She said she hates kids. She said she wanted us gone so she could be alone with you and the money, Noah added, trembling. She said Sarah was the only one who defended us, and that's why she had to leave. Every word from his children was a hammer blow demolishing the foundations of Mr. Harrison's perfect life. Parasites. Switzerland. Nuisance. Those words echoed in his head, connecting dots he had deliberately ignored. The times Victoria asked for the children to eat dinner in the kitchen, the times she suggested 3-month summer camps, the coldness in her gaze when she thought no one was watching her. Mr. Harrison slowly looked up from the asphalt, turning his neck towards his mansion, that fortress of success and wealth that stood imposingly at the end of the cobblestone driveway. And then he saw her. In the second-floor bay window, just above the main balcony, stood Victoria. She wasn't running towards them. She wasn't calling an ambulance, even though it was evident the children were hurt and there was a conflict in the street. She stood motionless, one hand resting on the window frame and the other holding her glass of white wine. The distance was considerable, but the clarity of the day and Mr. Harrison's perfect vision allowed him to see her expression. There was no concern, no anguish, there was annoyance. She was observing the scene like someone watching a boring TV show, waiting for the commercials to end. Seeing Mr. Harrison look at her, Victoria didn't wave or make an alarmed gesture. She simply turned elegantly and closed the heavy velvet curtains, disappearing from view. That gesture, that simple act of closing the curtain in front of his children's blood, was the definitive proof. More forceful than any security video, stronger than any confession. Mr. Harrison felt a violent nausea. He had been sleeping with the enemy. He had been about to hand over his children to a woman who despised them and had expelled the only person who had thrown herself to the ground, breaking her knees to catch them. He looked down at Sarah. She was still on the ground with her uniform dirty and torn, but she was no longer crying for herself. She was tearing a strip from her own white apron to bandage Noah's hand, ignoring the pain in her bruised hip. "Why didn't you tell me she threatened them, Mr. Harrison asked, his voice broken, falling to his knees in front of her, not as a boss, but as a defeated man. Sarah looked up, her brown eyes, clean and honest, fixed on him. "I tried to tell you, Mr. Harrison. In the hallway, I shouted that she wanted to send them to boarding school. I shouted that the children were in danger." Sarah paused and sighed, a trembling exhalation. "But you closed the door. You chose to believe her because she smells of expensive perfume, and I smell of bleach." The phrase pierced Mr. Harrison like a spear. It was true. His classism, his arrogance, his willful blindness had almost destroyed his family. He looked at Sarah's hands, those hands rough from hard work, which now held his son's injured hand with infinite delicacy. Those hands that had never stolen anything, only given. "Dad," Noah whispered, resting his head on Sarah's shoulder. "My hand hurts. I want to go home with Sarah." Mr. Harrison felt hot, unfamiliar tears sting his eyes. He hadn't cried since his wife's funeral, but seeing his children's absolute loyalty to that woman, and her dignity despite the humiliation, broke the dam. "Yes, son," Mr. Harrison said, swallowing the lump in his throat. He slowly stood up, but this time his posture had changed. He was no longer the millionaire running in a panic. Now he was a man with a mission, a cold and calculating fury, very different from the blind anger of before, settled in his chest. He looked towards the house, towards the closed window where Victoria was hiding. "Let's go home," Mr. Harrison said, extending a hand to Sarah. It wasn't an order. It was an invitation. It was a plea. "Please, Sarah, allow me to help you up. We need to tend to the children, and then I have to clean my house of the real trash." Sarah hesitated for a second. She looked at Mr. Harrison's well-groomed hand. Then she looked at the children who were looking at her with pleading eyes. She sighed, knowing that her heart would not allow her to leave them there, hurt and vulnerable. She took off her other yellow glove, letting it fall next to the suitcase like someone shedding old skin, and took Mr. Harrison's hand. He pulled her gently, but firmly, helping her to her feet. "Don't worry about the suitcase, sir," Sarah said, limping slightly. "I just want to help Noah. I'll carry the suitcase." Mr. Harrison said, taking the cheap plastic handle with his free hand, the hand that used to sign Millionaire checks. And so the strange procession began the uphill return. A millionaire dragging an old suitcase, a nanny limping with a blood-stained uniform, and two injured but victorious children. They walked towards the mansion where Victoria waited, sure of her triumph, unaware that the sentence of her own fate had just been dictated on the hot asphalt of the street, the phrase that changed everything. The walk back up the cobblestone driveway felt different under Mr. Harrison's feet. 10 minutes earlier, he had covered that same distance running like a madman, driven by the fear of his children's physical death. Now he walked slowly, carrying the weight of a spiritual death that had been happening under his own roof, without him realizing it. The sound of the blue suitcase rolling was the only noise in the air, but this time it was he who was pulling it. A millionaire, owner of an international conglomerate, dragging a flea market suitcase with a broken wheel, while his other hand held Liam's small, sticky hand, firmly. Sarah walked beside him, visibly limping. The fall had hurt her hip more than she admitted, but she didn't complain. She carried Noah in her arms, who had stopped crying, and now rested his head on the nanny's shoulder, sucking his healthy finger, seeking that primitive comfort only she knew how to give. Mr. Harrison glanced at Sarah. He saw the profile of her makeup-free face, marked by the sun and tiredness, but radiating a dignity that Victoria, with all her beauty treatments and jewels, would never possess. Liam broke the silence. Mr. Harrison, his hoarse voice scratching his throat. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you wait until today to tell me that Victoria, that she was mean to you? Liam, walking beside his father, looked down at his sports shoes stained with garden dirt. He squeezed his father's hand, but not with force, but with resignation. Because you love her, Dad, the child said, with crushing and painful logic. You always smile when she comes into the room, and when we say something, you say we're tired or we're spoiled. Mr. Harrison felt a pang in his stomach. Guilt was a corrosive acid. I thought she was trying to educate you, Mr. Harrison murmured, more to himself than to the child. I thought she was strict because she wanted you to be good men. She doesn't educate us, Dad, Noah intervened from Sarah's arms. He lifted his head, and his eyes, identical to his deceased mother's, fixed on Mr. Harrison. She hates us. She tells us we're a mistake. Mr. Harrison stopped dead in the middle of the path. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the immaculate lawn. He dropped the suitcase and turned to face Sarah and his children. He needed to understand the magnitude of the abyss into which he had almost thrown his family. What else does she do to you? Mr. Harrison asked, fearing the answer, but needing to hear it to fully awaken. I want to know everything now. Sarah tried to intervene protectively. Sir, it's not the time. The children are hurt, and it is the time. Sarah, Mr. Harrison interrupted, but this time without anger, with an urgent softness. I need to know who I let into my house. Noah took a deep breath, his small chest heaving with a contained sob. He looked at Sarah as if asking for permission, and she nodded slightly, stroking his back. When you go to work, Noah began with a trembling voice. She locks us in the playroom, takes our toys away, and says we're too noisy. If we cry, she turns up the music so she can't hear us, and she pinches us. Liam added, lifting the sleeve of his torn shirt. There, on the soft skin of his arm, were small bruises, purplish finger-shaped marks, old and new. She pinches us here, where our clothes cover it so you don't see it. She says if we tell you, she'll send us to a place where children don't have dads. Mr. Harrison looked at the bruises. They were physical evidence of his negligence. He had been so busy building an empire for his children's future that he had left their present in the hands of an executioner. My God, Mr. Harrison whispered, bringing a hand to his mouth, horrified. But it was then that Noah uttered the definitive phrase, the sentence that finally broke the millionaire's shell and rebuilt his heart in the same instant. The boy hugged Sarah's neck tightly, inhaling the scent of her cheap uniform, a mix of lavender soap and honest sweat. Dad, please, don't ever send her away again, Noah said, his eyes full of tears. Sarah smells like Mom used to smell. Victoria smells like cold and fear. When Sarah hugs us, the fear goes away. When Victoria hugs us, the fear begins. The world stopped for Mr. Harrison. Sarah smells like Mom used to smell. That phrase transported him 5 years back to the hospital, to his wife's last breath, who had made him promise that he would take care of the children, that they would never lack love. And he, in his pain, had confused love with conveniences. He had filled the house with expensive toys and efficient nannies, But he had forgotten the smell of home, the smell of security. Mr. Harrison looked at Sarah. He no longer saw the domestic employee. He saw the woman who had kept the promise he had broken. He saw the mother his children had chosen with the infallible instinct of the heart. "She smells like Mom," Mr. Harrison repeated in a whisper, and a solitary tear, heavy and burning, rolled down his cheek. It was the first time his children had seen him cry. The silence that followed was sacred. The wind moved the treetops, and for the first time in years, Mr. Harrison felt he could truly breathe. The blindfold had completely fallen. The image of Victoria in the window, indifferent and cruel, superimposed with the image of Sarah on the ground, bleeding for his children. The choice no longer existed. Only the truth existed. Mr. Harrison wiped the tear with the back of his hand and looked at his children with a new intensity. "I swear," he said with a firm voice, "a promise of blood. I swear on your mother's memory that no one will ever hurt you again. You will never again be afraid in your own home." He took the suitcase again, but this time he lifted it into the air with one hand, as if it weighed nothing, as if by lifting it he was also lifting the weight of his mistakes. "Let's go," he said. "We have some cleaning to do, and I'm not talking about the house." The day of transformation. The entrance to the mansion was not triumphant, but it was powerful. The main solid oak door, which Victoria had closed with such satisfaction minutes before, swung wide open under Mr. Harrison's determined push. The foyer was impressive. Italian marble floors, a 6-foot crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling, and a double staircase that screamed opulence. But that afternoon, luxury was invaded by reality. Mr. Harrison entered first, leaving Sarah's old suitcase right in the center of the foyer, on the family crest inlaid in the floor, breaking the perfect aesthetic of the place. Behind him came Sarah, limping, gently lowering Noah from her arms. Liam entered last, looking around warily, as if expecting the walls to attack him. "Sit there," Mr. Harrison ordered, pointing to one of the immaculate white velvet sofas that decorated the entrance. They were show sofas, furniture no one was allowed to use. Sarah hesitated. "Sir, we're dirty. We have blood and dirt. We'll stain the velvet." "The velvet!" Mr. Harrison exclaimed, his voice echoing in the dome. "It's a piece of furniture, Sarah. My children are worth more than furniture. Sit down." Sarah obeyed, sitting timidly on the edge, with Liam and Noah clinging to her like barnacles. The blood from Noah's knees instantly stained the white fabric, leaving a bright red mark. "Mr. Harrison looked at the stain and felt no anger, but relief. That stain was real. That stain was life. "Rosa! Janet!" Mr. Harrison shouted towards the service hallway. 2 maids appeared running, frightened by the shouts. Seeing the scene, the disheveled boss, the injured children, the fired nanny sitting on the forbidden sofa, they froze. "Bring the first aid kit, the big one, and warm water and clean towels. Now," he ordered. The women rushed to obey. "Mr. Harrison didn't wait. He took off his $3,000 suit jacket and threw it to the floor carelessly. He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, unbuttoning his gold cufflinks and leaving them on a side table. When Rosa returned with the first aid kit, Mr. Harrison took it from her hands. "Leave us alone. Go to the kitchen and await instructions." Mr. Harrison knelt in front of the sofa. He didn't just bend down. He got directly on his knees on the hard marble, coming eye level with Sarah and the children. He opened the metal box and took out the disinfectant and gauze. "Let me do it, sir." "You don't know how?" Sarah began, trying to take the cotton swab. Her instinct for servitude was still active, despite everything. Mr. Harrison gently stopped her hand. His touch was warm, firm, human. "No, Sarah," he said, looking at her fixedly in the eyes. "You've done your part. You saved them. You took the blow. Now it's my turn. I am their father. It's my duty to heal them." Sarah withdrew her hand, surprised. She saw something in Mr. Harrison's eyes that she had never seen in the 3 years she had worked there. Humility. The great lord, the untouchable man, was kneeling at her feet, ready to clean wounds. Mr. Harrison took Noah's foot with extreme delicacy. He soaked the cotton in antiseptic. "It's going to sting a little, champ," Mr. Harrison whispered. He blew softly on the scraped knee as he cleaned the blood and dirt. Noah winced, but didn't cry. He was fascinated, watching his dad. He had never seen him so close, so focused on him. "Dad," Noah said softly, "do you know how to fix things?" "I'm learning, son," Mr. Harrison replied, his voice breaking. "I'm learning many things today. Forgive me for not being here to fix you sooner." Mr. Harrison cleaned every wound, carefully bandaged Noah's hand with surgical precision, put a band-aid on Liam's arm, cut, and then did something unexpected. He took Sarah's hands. Sarah tried to pull them away out of shame. Her hands were red, rough, with short, unpolished nails, so different from Victoria's perfectly manicured hands. "Sir, my hands are dirty." "Your hands are the cleanest in this house, Sarah," Mr. Harrison said, examining the nanny's palms. He saw the small cuts she had gotten from falling and the skin irritated by cleaning chemicals. "These hands have held my family when I let go of them." Mr. Harrison took a damp cloth and began to clean Sarah's hands. He cleaned the children's blood. He cleaned the street dust. He did it with an almost religious reverence. It was an act of contrition, the boss washing the servants' hands. The social hierarchy dissolved in that square foot of intimacy and shared pain. "Forgive me, Sarah," Mr. Harrison said, without looking up from her hands. "I was blind, an arrogant idiot. I judged you by your uniform and didn't see your heart. I accused you of being a thief when the only one being robbed was you, robbed of your dignity." Sarah felt tears return to her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. "You don't have to apologize to me, sir. Just don't keep me away from them." "Never," Mr. Harrison promised, looking up. His eyes shone with fierce determination. "Not only will you not leave, but starting today, you are the most important person in this house after my children. No more uniform, Sarah. No more yellow gloves. No one will ever treat you as inferior under this roof again." At that moment, the sound of high heels echoed from the top of the stairs. Clack, clack, clack. A slow, deliberate rhythm. Mr. Harrison, Sarah, and the children looked up. Victoria was there on the stair landing, looking impeccable in a cream silk dress. She had retouched her makeup and held a fresh glass of wine. She looked at the scene with a mix of amusement and disdain. The suitcase thrown, the stained sofa, Mr. Harrison on his knees before the nanny. "What a touching scene," Victoria said, her voice dripping sarcasm. "I see you brought the trash back, Alex. Did you feel sorry for her? Or did the brats throw one of their tantrums to convince you?" The children tensed, clinging to Sarah. Fear returned to their eyes. "Mr. Harrison gently released Sarah's hands and stood up. He rose slowly, like a predator straightening before an attack. There was no longer doubt in his posture, no longer tiredness. There was only the terrifying calm of a man who has found his purpose and is about to execute justice. "Come down, Victoria, Mr. Harrison said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a low, flat tone, much more terrifying than any scream. "Come down here. We need to talk about the watch and about Switzerland." Victoria smiled, believing she still had control, believing she could manipulate the situation as she always did. She began to descend the steps, unaware that each step brought her not to a negotiation, but to her final sentence. "Oh, darling, don't tell me you believed any of her lies," she began to say, descending with the air of a queen. Mr. Harrison didn't respond. He just waited. The transformation was complete. The blind millionaire had died in the street. The lion father had been born in the foyer, and the prey was walking straight towards him. The confrontation. Victoria finished descending the last steps of the imposing spiral staircase. Her stiletto heels echoed on the marble with an authority she no longer possessed, though she still didn't know it. She stopped a few feet from the sofa, one hand on her hip and the other holding her glass of wine, observing the family scene with a barely concealed grimace of disgust. To her, the scene was pathetic. The most powerful man in the city, kneeling beside a maid and two dirty children. "Alex, please," Victoria said, breaking the tense silence with a tone of annoyance. "Get up off the floor. You're ruining a $3,000 suit, and get that woman out of here before she stains the upholstery even more." Hadn't we already closed this chapter? Mr. Harrison didn't immediately stand up. He took a second, a long and terrible second, to look at Victoria from below. For the first time, he didn't see her through the filter of desire or social convenience. He saw her with brutal clarity. He saw the coldness in her blue eyes, the cruel tension at the corners of her lips, the total absence of empathy towards the children who had bloodied bandages on their hands. Mr. Harrison stood up slowly. His movements were fluid, but charged with a latent threat. He didn't brush the dust off his pants. He didn't adjust his shirt. He stood there like a wall between his family and the woman who had tried to destroy it. "You're right, Victoria, Mr. Harrison said with a soft, almost conversational voice that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "We need to close this chapter, but to do it right, I need to verify something." Mr. Harrison turned towards Sarah's blue suitcase, which rested in the center of the foyer. He walked towards it. "What are you doing?" Victoria asked, frowning. "Are you finally going through her things?" "Look carefully. You're sure to find money, or maybe more jewelry." Those people are like magpies. They have eyes for what isn't theirs. Mr. Harrison ignored the comment, knelt down, and unzipped the old suitcase. The sound of the zipper ripping through the silence was sharp. He opened the lid. There were no gold bars or wads of cash. The contents of Sarah's suitcase were a testament to humility and love. Carefully folded work clothes, a cheap wooden rosary, a framed photo of her parents back home, and on top of it all, a homemade photo album. Mr. Harrison opened the album. They weren't photos of Sarah's family. They were photos of Liam and Noah, photos of their first steps, photos of their birthdays, photos of them sleeping. Sarah wasn't taking monetary valuables. She was taking memories of the children she loved as her own. Mr. Harrison felt a lump in his throat, but swallowed it. He reached into the side pocket of the beige bag, which was also there. The bag Liam had specifically pointed out. His fingers touched the cold metal. He pulled it out. The gold and diamond Rolex gleamed obscenely under the crystal chandelier's light, contrasting with the simplicity of Sarah's belongings. Aha! Victoria cried triumphantly, taking a step forward and pointing with her French manicured finger. I knew it! There it is! You're a genius, my love. You caught her red-handed. Victoria turned to Sarah with a predatory smile. And now, what will you say, you meek little mouse? That it appeared there by magic? Thief, you should be in handcuffs. Sarah lowered her head, ashamed not by the theft she didn't commit, but by the virulence of that woman's hatred. The children pressed closer to her, trembling. But Mr. Harrison wasn't looking at Sarah. He was looking at the watch in his hand, and then at Victoria. His face showed not the satisfaction of having solved a crime, but the deep disappointment of having discovered a betrayal. It's funny, Mr. Harrison said, turning the watch between his fingers. Liam told me something very interesting on the street. He told me they saw you enter my room, that they saw you take the watch, and that they saw you put it in this bag. Victoria's smile wavered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly. She was an expert manipulator. Alex, for God's sake, you're going to believe a 5-year-old? They have overactive imaginations. Besides, they adore her. They'd lie to protect her. It's obvious she manipulated them into saying that. It's part of her plan. And is it also part of her plan that my children have bruises on their arms? Mr. Harrison asked. His voice rose in volume, losing its initial softness. Is it also part of her plan that Liam has pinch marks in places their clothes cover, or that Noah has nightmares because of you? Victoria paled slightly. She took a step back, almost tripping over her own heels. I was just trying to discipline them. They're wild. Alex, you're not here all day. You don't know how difficult it is. Don't lie to me, Mr. Harrison's shout echoed off the marble walls like thunder. Victoria jumped in fright, spilling some wine on the rug. Sarah hugged the children, covering their ears, but they watched their father in awe. They had never seen him defend them like this. Mr. Harrison advanced towards Victoria. She backed away until she hit the staircase railing. I gave you my trust. I opened the doors of my home to you. I was going to give you my last name. And you used that power to torture 2 children who lost their mother. Mr. Harrison stopped an inch from her face. He could smell her expensive perfume, which now disgusted him. You planned all this, the theft, the dismissal, everything to send them to a boarding school in Switzerland and keep the money and the mansion all to yourself. I did it for us, Victoria whispered, trying one last desperate tactic. She dropped her glass to the floor, where it shattered into 1,000 pieces, and grabbed the lapels of Mr. Harrison's jacket with trembling hands. Her eyes filled with fake tears. Alex, my love, understand, they're an obstacle. They don't let us be happy. You and I deserve a free life, to travel, to enjoy. They'll be better off in Switzerland with professionals. I just wanted us to have a future. Mr. Harrison looked at her hands clinging to his shirt. With a brusque, disgusted movement, he shook them off as if they were poisonous insects. A future? Mr. Harrison laughed a dry, humorless laugh. You didn't want a future with me. You wanted my credit card. And to get it, you were willing to sacrifice my children's happiness. Mr. Harrison raised the Rolex in the air. This watch, he said, looking at it with contempt. You said it was your favorite, that it symbolized our eternal love. With a violent motion, Mr. Harrison hurled the gold watch against the farthest stone wall. The impact was brutal. The precise Swiss mechanism exploded. Diamonds flew through the air, and the crystal turned to dust. The watch lay destroyed on the floor. Victoria let out a choked cry, covering her mouth, horrified by the destruction of something so valuable. That's the value your love has for me now, Victoria. Mr. Harrison said, with a glacial calm. Trash, rubble, nothing. Victoria looked at the remains of the watch and then at Mr. Harrison. Her mask fell completely. There was no longer fear or seduction, only pure hatred. "You're an imbecile," she spat, her face contorting into an ugly, real grimace. "You're going to regret this. You're going to be left alone with those two monsters and that ignorant maid. You're going to come begging me to come back when you realize that no woman of your caliber will want to carry your baggage. I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life than spend another minute with a monster like you," Mr. Harrison replied. He turned towards Sarah and the children, turning his back on Victoria. "Sarah, please, take the children to the kitchen. Ask Rosa to prepare whatever they want. Ice cream, pizza, whatever. I don't want them to see what's about to happen." Sarah nodded, pale but grateful. She got up with difficulty, took the children's hands, and quickly guided them towards the service hallway. "Come on, my children. Let's eat something yummy," she whispered, protecting them to the last moment. When the kitchen door closed behind them, Mr. Harrison turned back to Victoria one last time. They were alone in the foyer. The air was charged with static electricity. "Now, Mr. Harrison said, pointing to the main door. "Get out. Divine justice." Victoria straightened, trying to regain some of her shattered dignity. She smoothed her silk dress, lifted her chin, and looked at Mr. Harrison haughtily. "I'm going," she said with disdain. "I'm not staying in this emotional pigsty for another minute, but I'm leaving in my car, and I want your chauffeur to take me to the Four Seasons Hotel. And tomorrow you'll speak with my lawyers about the compensation for breach of engagement." Mr. Harrison looked at her with incredulity, and then a cold smile crossed his face. He walked to the entrance table where the car keys were. "I think you're confused, Victoria," he said, taking the key fob for the convertible Mercedes she used. "The car is in the company's name, my company. The chauffeur is an employee of the house." "My house? And about the compensation?" Mr. Harrison approached her and extended his hand, palm open. The ring. Victoria protected her left hand with her right, covering the massive 5-carat diamond. "It's mine!" she shrieked. "It's a gift." "It was a gift conditional on marriage, Mr. Harrison corrected, implacable. "And there will be no marriage. Give it back. Or I swear to God I'll call the police and report you for the theft of the watch. I have 2 eyewitnesses, and your fingerprints must be all over Sarah's bag. You decide. Do you give me the ring and walk out, or do you leave in a police cruiser in handcuffs?" Victoria trembled with rage. She knew she had lost. She knew Mr. Harrison had the power and resources to make good on his threat. With furious, abrupt movements, she ripped the ring from her finger, almost hurting her skin, and threw it at Mr. Harrison's chest. "Take your rock!" she cried. "I hope you choke on it." "Mister." Harrison caught the ring in the air with one hand, unperturbed. "Thank you. Now out." "I'm going to call an Uber," Victoria said, pulling out her latest generation cell phone. "Call it outside," Mr. Harrison ordered. "Off my property. I don't want you breathing my air for another second." "Mr." Harrison advanced towards her, forcing her to retreat towards the door. Victoria, seeing that he would not yield, turned on her heels and walked towards the exit. As she opened the door, the sunset light entered the foyer, illuminating the villain's exit. But before crossing the threshold, Victoria stopped. She saw something that made her blood boil. In the hallway connecting to the kitchen, discreetly peeking out, were Rosa, Janet, and the gardener, Mr. Morales, the service staff. Those people Victoria had humiliated, ignored, and treated like furniture for months, were there in silence. They said nothing, but on their faces was a deep satisfaction, a silent joy. Rosa had a slight smile on her lips. Mr. Morales took off his hat and nodded imperceptibly towards Mr. Harrison. Victoria felt naked before their gazes. She knew they were celebrating her downfall. "What are you staring at, you idiots?" Victoria yelled at them, losing her temper one last time. "You're still just starving servants." No one replied. Her insult fell into the void, powerless. She no longer had power. Her voice no longer caused fear, only pity. Mr. Harrison approached the door. "Goodbye, Victoria," he said. Victoria stepped onto the porch. The contrast was brutal. An hour ago, she was the lady of the house giving orders and drinking wine. Now she was standing on the street, without a car, without a ring, without a millionaire fiancé, and with her reputation stained. Mr. Harrison pushed the heavy oak door. "And Victoria," Mr. Harrison said before closing, stopping the movement for an instant. "If you ever go near my children again, I won't be so kind." Slam. The door closing was definitive. The sound of the bolt sliding was the sweetest music the house had heard in years. Mr. Harrison stood for a moment in front of the closed door, resting his forehead on the cold wood. He closed his eyes and exhaled a long breath, releasing months of tension, of lies, of blindness. The silence in the house was different. Now it was no longer an oppressive and fearful silence. It was a clean silence, a silence of peace. Mr. Harrison turned and saw his employees looking at him with respect and, for the first time, with genuine affection. "Rosa, mister," Harrison said in a tired but kind voice, "please throw those watch remnants in the trash and open the windows. I want the smell of cheap perfume out of this house." "Yes, sir, with pleasure," Rosa replied with a radiant smile. "And the children?" Mr. Harrison asked. "They're in the kitchen, sir," Janet said excitedly. "Sarah's putting new cartoon band-aids on them from her bag. They're eating cookies and laughing." A genuine smile, the first in years, appeared on Mr. Harrison's face. "Good. I'm going there. Tonight I'm having dinner in the kitchen with my family. Mr. Harrison crossed the foyer, stepping over the wine stain on the rug without caring at all, and headed towards the warm light emanating from the service door, leaving behind the cold luxury to enter the warmth of his true home. Outside, on the street that was beginning to darken, Victoria walked with difficulty on the cobblestones in her high heels. Alone, as the lights of the neighboring mansions came on, reminding her of the world she no longer belonged to. Divine justice had not come down from heaven with lightning and thunder. It had arrived in the form of an awakened father and a closed door. The emotional climax, the healing. The kitchen door was ajar, letting a strip of golden, warm light into the dim hallway. Mr. Harrison stopped right at the threshold, hidden by the doorframe, unable to enter yet. He needed a moment. He needed to observe that world that had existed under his own roof, and that he, in his blindness as a businessman, had completely ignored. Inside, the scene seemed straight out of another era, from a Renaissance painting of maternal devotion. Sarah was sitting in a simple wooden chair with Noah on her lap and Liam standing beside her, leaning on her shoulder. There were no luxuries there. No marble, no silk, no gold watches. Only the smell of vanilla, warm milk, and medicinal alcohol. "Does it hurt a lot, my love?" Sarah asked in a whispered voice as she finished putting a superhero-themed band-aid on Noah's index finger. "A little," the boy replied, sniffling. "But you gave me a magic kiss, so it's going to get better now." "Mama Sarah's kisses heal everything," Liam affirmed with absolute seriousness, stroking his brother's cheek. Mr. Harrison felt a lump in his throat so tight it was hard to swallow. Mama Sarah. His children had given the most sacred title in the world to an employee he paid minimum wage, and she, far from rejecting it, wore it with a dignity that no jewel could match. Sarah looked up from Noah's finger and looked at Liam. She saw the cut on his arm, already clean but still red and angry. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly swallowed them so as not to scare them. "You are very brave," Sarah told them, running her rough hands through their messy hair. "What you did today, jumping out that window, was very dangerous. I was very scared. Don't do it again. Do you hear me? My heart can't take so much fright. I had to save you," Liam said, shrugging as if it were obvious. "You're our family, Dad." Dad was bewitched by the witch. We had to wake him up. Mr. Harrison closed his eyes, resting his forehead against the doorframe. Bewitched. His children's innocence had a surgical precision for describing his negligence. He decided he could no longer stay hidden. He took a deep breath, smoothed his wrinkled shirt, and gently pushed the door open. The sound of the hinges made all three turn their heads at the same time. There was an instant of instinctive tension. The children tensed in Sarah's lap, a conditioned reflex from months of seeing Victoria enter to scold them. But seeing that it was their father, and that he came without his jacket, with his sleeves rolled up, and his face clear of anger, their shoulders relaxed a little. Sarah tried to get up immediately, making a gesture to put Noah down. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry, we were." "Don't get up," Mr. Harrison said quickly, raising a hand in a gesture of peace. His voice was soft, devoid of the metallic authority he usually used. "Please, Sarah, stay seated." Mr. Harrison entered the kitchen. He felt like an intruder in his own house, a clumsy giant entering a delicate sanctuary. He dragged a tall stool from the central island and placed it in front of them, sitting down to be at their height. He sat knee to knee with Sarah. He looked at his children, then looked Sarah in the eyes. The silence stretched, charged with unspoken emotions. "Sarah," Mr. Harrison began, and his voice trembled slightly. "I have no words. The dictionary falls short to apologize to you. What you saw today, the way I treated you in the street, the way I allowed that woman to humiliate you, is unforgivable. Sarah shook her head gently, lowering her gaze to her hands intertwined with the children's. Fear makes us do ugly things, sir. You were afraid for your children. I understand that. No, Mr. Harrison corrected her firmly. It wasn't just fear. It was arrogance. It was blindness. I thought money gave me the right, and I almost lost the only thing that matters. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I want to make it right. I know I can't erase what happened, but I want to fix the future. Mr. Harrison reached into his pant pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He placed it on the table but didn't open it. I'm going to triple your salary starting today, Mr. Harrison said, speaking quickly, trying to use his usual business language to solve the emotional problem. You'll have private health insurance for you and your parents back home, paid vacation, your own car if you want it, and I'll give you back your room. We'll redecorate it however you want. I ask that you don't leave us. The children looked at Sarah with huge eyes, waiting for her answer. Noah squeezed her hand tightly. Sarah looked at the checkbook on the table. Then she looked at Mr. Harrison's desperate face. A sad, sweet smile curved her lips. With infinite gentleness, she pushed the checkbook back towards Mr. Harrison. Keep your money, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison froze. Panic returned to his eyes. It's not enough, Sarah. I can pay more. Tell me the figure, whatever it is. Name your price. That's the problem, sir, Sarah said, and her voice took on a new firmness, a moral authority that made her seem giant in that wooden chair. Do you believe this is a job? Do you believe I took care of Liam and Noah for the check you gave me every 2 weeks? Sarah stroked Noah's head, who closed his eyes at the contact. I didn't throw myself to my knees today for money. I didn't endure Miss Victoria's insults for money. I did it because I love them. Sarah looked Mr. Harrison directly in the soul. Love doesn't have a payroll, sir. If I stay, it won't be for triple the salary. It will be because these children need me, and because I wouldn't know how to live without seeing them grow up. Mr. Harrison felt the last barrier of his ego crumble. He withdrew his hand from the checkbook as if it burned. He realized how small his world of finance was compared to the emotional universe of that humble woman. You're right, Mr. Harrison whispered, lowering his head, ashamed again. I'm a fool. I keep trying to buy what can't be bought. You're not a fool, Dad, Liam said suddenly. He let go of Sarah and took a step towards his father. He placed his small hand with the new band-aid on Mr. Harrison's knee. You were just lost, like when we get lost in the supermarket and cry. But we found you, Mr. Harrison looked up, his eyes moist. He looked at his son, so wise for his age, forged in the pain of maternal absence and paternal negligence. Mr. Harrison took Liam's hand and kissed it. Then he looked at Sarah. So, you're staying? He asked with the vulnerability of a child. I'm staying, Sarah affirmed, smiling, but with one condition. Anything, Mr. Harrison said instantly. You have to be present, Sarah said, pointing a finger at him. I can care for them. I can feed them and heal their wounds. But I can't be their father. They need you, not the man who signs checks, but the man who plays on the floor and reads stories. If you disappear into your office again and leave us alone, then I will leave, because I will not be an accomplice to another abandonment. Mr. Harrison nodded solemnly. It was a fair deal. It was the deal of his life. Deal, Mr. Harrison said. He extended his right hand towards Sarah. This time, Sarah didn't hesitate because of her dirty or rough hands. She shook Mr. Harrison's hand firmly. It was a pact sealed in the kitchen, without lawyers, without notaries, but more binding than any business contract. Yes, the twins cried in unison, breaking the solemnity of the moment. Noah jumped from Sarah's lap and threw himself into his father's arms. Liam joined the hug. Mr. Harrison received them, burying his face in their necks, smelling that scent of childhood he had almost lost forever. Sarah watched them, tears rolling freely down her cheeks, feeling that the storm had finally passed. The role reversal. The sun had completely set, and night enveloped the mansion. But in the kitchen, the light was bright and the atmosphere festive. I'm hungry, Noah announced, breaking the sentimental moment with the biological urgency of a 5-year-old. Wolf hungry, Mr. Harrison laughed, subtly wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Well, Mr. Wolf, what do you want for dinner? We can order anything you want. Sushi, pizza, burgers. No, the two cried. We want Sarah's pancakes. Mr. Harrison blinked. Pancakes for dinner? He looked at Sarah confused. Is that nutritious? Sarah stood up, smoothing her torn apron, which she was still wearing. Sometimes, sir, The soul needs more sugar than vitamins. Tonight is pancake celebration night. Pancakes it is then, Mr. Harrison conceded. He stood up. I'll call Rosa to prepare them. No, Sarah said, stopping him with an amused look. Rosa and Janet already left to rest. They had a long day with Miss Victoria's whole spectacle. Mr. Harrison looked at the immense kitchen, full of stainless steel appliances that looked like spaceship controls. So, you're making them? We're making them, Sarah corrected. And when I say we, I mean everyone, including you, Mr. Harrison. Me? Mr. Harrison took a step back, alarmed. Sarah, I don't know how to cook. The only thing I can do in the kitchen is pour myself water, and sometimes I drop the ice. I burn water. Sarah. Liam and Noah laughed, covering their mouths. It's easy, Dad, Liam said, taking his hand and dragging him towards the pantry. You whisk the eggs, it's fun. And so the real transformation began. The man who that very morning had been closing Millionaire mergers on the phone was now standing in front of a mixing bowl with the sleeves of his silk shirt rolled up to his elbows, holding a wire whisk with the same tense concentration with which he would hold a scalpel. Slower, sir, Sarah instructed, standing by the stove warming the butter. If you whisk so fast, you'll decorate the walls with flour. It's an efficiency technique, Mr. Harrison joked, though he slowed down. That's it, that's better. With love, not with fury. The kitchen filled with noise, the sound of the whisk, the sizzling of the butter, the children's laughter as they tried to set the table. Mr. Harrison watched his children. Noah was trying to carry the plates, walking with his tongue sticking out in concentration. Liam was folding paper napkins into strange shapes he called airplanes. Hey, Liam, Mr. Harrison said as he continued whisking. I never knew you liked airplanes. Liam looked at him, surprised. Dad, I have airplane sheets, and my lamp is an astronaut. I like the sky. Mr. Harrison felt a pang of shame. Of course, it was in his room. He had seen it 1,000 times but had never really looked. That's right, Mr. Harrison said softly. Forgive me. From now on, I'm going to look more closely. I promise you that one day, I'll take you to see real airplanes at the airport hangar. We'll even fly on one. Liam's eyes sparkled with an intensity worth more than all the stock market shares. Really? You and me? You, me, Noah, and Sarah. Everyone. Yay. Noah cried, almost knocking over a plastic cup. When the batter was ready, Sarah began pouring perfect circles into the hot pan. The smell of butter and vanilla filled the kitchen, definitively erasing the trace of Victoria's expensive perfume. Time to sit down, Sarah ordered. The first one's ready, Mr. Harrison sat not at the head of the table, which didn't exist in the kitchen, but on a side stool, squeezed between Liam and Noah. Sarah served the plates and, to Mr. Harrison's surprise, served one for herself and sat across from them. Enjoy your meal, she said naturally. Mr. Harrison looked at his plate, a golden pancake, steaming, with a little honey. He looked at his sides. His children ate voraciously, smearing their cheeks. He looked ahead. Sarah ate slowly, with natural elegance, smiling at the sight of the children. Mr. Harrison picked up his fork and knife, cut a piece, and brought it to his mouth. Flavor, flavor of home, flavor of simplicity, flavor of forgiveness. It's delicious, Mr. Harrison said, and he wasn't lying. It tasted better than the lobster he used to eat at charity dinners. Dad has honey on his nose, Noah pointed out, laughing and pointing with his fork. Mr. Harrison touched his nose. Indeed, he had a sticky drop. At another time, he would have been horrified, would have asked for a linen napkin and cleaned himself with irritation. But that night, he looked at his son, laughed, and purposely smeared his other cheek with his finger. Now I'm a honey warrior, Mr. Harrison roared, playing along. The children burst into laughter. Sarah let out a clear, ringing laugh that filled the space. Mr. Harrison paused for a moment, observing the scene. The messy kitchen, the flour on the counter, his happy children, the woman who had saved them laughing across the table. He realized he had changed roles. He was no longer the distant provider observing from above. Now he was a participant. He was in the arena. He was dirty, tired, emotionally exhausted, but he felt more alive than ever. He looked Sarah in the eyes over the stack of pancakes. Thank you, he told her silently, moving only his lips. Sarah nodded slightly, understanding the message. They had crossed a bridge. The chasm that separated the boss from the employee had been filled with pancakes and laughter. Well, warriors, Mr. Harrison said, jokingly serious. Whoever finishes first gets to choose tonight's story, but he raised an admonitory finger. I'll read it. I'll win. Noah cried, stuffing a giant piece into his mouth. "No, I will," Liam replied. Dinner continued, noisy and chaotic, perfect in its imperfection. Outside the house, the world kept turning, relentless and cold. But inside that kitchen, under the warm light, something indestructible was being forged. A family, not a family of blood and last names, but a family of shared scars and proven loyalties. And Mr. Harrison knew, as he wiped the honey from Noah's face, that he would never again be poor because he had finally understood where his true wealth lay. The final resolution, an epilogue. Dinner was over, but the magic in the kitchen lingered, floating in the air along with the sweet aroma of vanilla and honey. The wall clock, a simple plastic device that contrasted with the destroyed Swiss watches, read 9 o'clock. It was late for the children, but no one had dared to break the spell of the moment. "All right, honey warriors," Mr. Harrison announced, standing up and shaking pancake crumbs from his dress pants. "The battle is over. It's time for the strategic retreat to the trenches, which means to bed." "No," Noah whined, rubbing his eyes with a closed fist, betrayed by his own sleep. "I'm not sleepy. I want to play more." "Your eyes say otherwise, little one," Sarah said, approaching him with an ease born of practice. She lifted him into her arms. Noah, despite his verbal protest, rested his head on her shoulder instantly, surrendering. "School tomorrow. And guess what? Tomorrow, Dad's driving you." Liam's eyes widened. "You're driving us?" he asked, looking at Mr. Harrison with disbelief. "Not the chauffeur?" "Me," Mr. Harrison affirmed. "We'll sing in the car, but for that, you have to sleep. Let's go." The procession went upstairs, but this time the house didn't feel empty or cold. The hallway lights, which always seemed museum-like, now illuminated a real family. Mr. Harrison carried Liam piggyback on his back, something he had never done before, and Sarah carried Noah. They reached the twins' room. It was a spacious room, full of expensive toys that had barely been touched. Mr. Harrison put Liam in his race car bed, and Sarah tucked Noah into his. "The story," Liam remembered, getting comfortable under his airplane sheets. "You promised to read the story." Mr. Harrison approached the bookshelf. His fingers ran along the spines of the books. The Little Prince, Children's Don Quixote, Peter Pan. He chose Peter Pan. He sat in a rocking chair between the two beds, opened the book, and began to read. At first, his voice sounded stiff, accustomed to reading financial reports and legal contracts. He read without inflection, stumbling over the fantastic words. But Sarah, who was standing by the door observing, smiled and gestured for him to loosen up. Mr. Harrison took a deep breath, looked at his children who watched him with devotion, and then let out the child within him. That child he had buried under layers of responsibility and pain. He began to do voices. He did Tinker Bell's squeaky voice, Captain Hook's deep voice. Liam and Noah laughed, a sleepy, happy laugh. Little by little, their eyelids grew heavy. Noah's breathing became rhythmic and deep. Liam resisted a little longer, struggling to enjoy every second of his present father, but finally succumbed to sleep. Mr. Harrison gently closed the book. The silence in the room was sacred. He got up carefully so as not to creak the wooden floor and approached each child. He kissed Noah's forehead, caressing the bandage on his hand. He kissed Liam's forehead, brushing the band-aid on his arm. "Good night, my loves," Mr. Harrison whispered, his voice broken by an emotion that filled his chest to the point of pain. "You will never be alone again, I promise." He turned towards the door. Sarah was still there, leaning against the frame, arms crossed, with an expression of absolute peace on her face. Mr. Harrison walked towards her, and they went out into the hallway, leaving the door ajar, just as Liam liked, so he wouldn't be scared. "You did very well, sir," Sarah whispered. "You have a talent for pirate voices." "Thanks, Sarah," he replied, smiling with tiredness, but with light in his eyes. "Though I think Captain Hook sounded a bit like my accountant." They walked in silence down the hallway until they reached the main balcony, the same one from which Victoria had observed the tragedy hours before. Mr. Harrison opened the glass doors, and they went out into the cool night. The air smelled of damp earth. Mr. Harrison leaned on the stone railing, looking towards the dark street, towards the exact spot where he had fallen to his knees that afternoon. "Sarah," he said without looking at her, looking at nothing. "Today you saved 3 lives, not just the children's. You saved mine too." Sarah stood beside him, respecting the silence of the night. "You saved yourself, Mr. Harrison. You decided to open your eyes. Many men in your position would have chosen the comfort of a lie. They would have let Miss Victoria win rather than face the scandal. You chose the truth. That's courageous." Mr. Harrison turned to look at her. The moonlight bathed Sarah's face, softening her features, making her look like a guardian angel dressed in simple clothes. "I don't want you to be my employee," Mr. Harrison blurted out suddenly. Sarah tensed. Fear flashed in her eyes for a second. "Are you firing me again?" she asked in a thin voice. "No, for God's sake." "No," Mr. Harrison quickly corrected, taking a step closer. "I mean, I don't want you to be just an employee. I don't want you to wear a uniform. I don't want you to eat in the kitchen while I eat in the dining room. I want you to be part of this, of the family. I want you to be the children's governess, their guide, my life advisor, if you can call it that." Mr. Harrison fumbled for words, trying clumsily to define a feeling that was just budding and was much bigger than an employment contract. "I want you to have authority, that if you see I'm failing as a father, you have the power to tell me without fear of me firing you. I want us to be a team. Do you accept?" Sarah looked at him deeply. She saw the man behind the money, she saw the loneliness he also carried, and she smiled. "I accept to be part of the team, sir, but with one more condition." "Another one?" Mr. Harrison smiled. "You're a tough negotiator. Tell me, you have to stop calling me just Sarah or Sir. My name is Sarah Marie, and I prefer to be addressed informally. If we're going to be family, we need to talk like family." Mr. Harrison nodded, feeling another weight lift from his shoulders. "All right, Sarah Marie. And you have to stop calling me Sir or Mr. Harrison. Just call me Alex." "I'll try." "Alex," she said, testing the name on her tongue. It sounded strange, but it sounded good. It sounded like the future. They stood there a moment longer, under the stars, two souls from different worlds, who had collided to save the most important thing, the innocent love of two children, the time jump. 1 year later, the same perfect cobblestone street shimmered under the afternoon sun, but this time the light was not cruel or dramatic. It was golden, warm, a light of celebration. The trees had grown a little taller, and the flowers in the gardens were in full spring bloom. The mansion's front door opened. No crying woman came out. No suitcase was dragged out in despair. A laugh came out. Liam and Noah, now 6 years old and visibly taller, ran out towards the family car parked in the driveway. They no longer wore starched, uncomfortable clothes. They wore superhero t-shirts and shorts with knees scraped from playing soccer, not from fleeing danger. "I call window," Noah cried, running towards the back door. "No, I called it first," Liam retorted, laughing and gently pushing his brother. Behind them came Mr. Harrison. He no longer wore a suit and tie. He wore beige linen pants and a rolled-up white shirt, relaxed, with sunglasses, carrying a portable beach cooler. He looked younger, less gray. The stress lines on his forehead had softened, replaced by expression lines around his eyes, marks of someone who smiles often. And finally, she came out, Sarah Marie. There was no longer a blue uniform, no white apron, no yellow rubber gloves. She wore a light summer dress in a vibrant coral color that highlighted her tanned skin. Her hair, once always pulled back in a severe bun, now fell loosely over her shoulders in soft waves. She walked confidently, with her head held high, mistress of her space and her happiness. She locked the house door. A house that was no longer a prison of absurd rules, but a home full of noise, toys, and music. "Do you have everything?" Sarah asked, coming down the steps. "Sunscreen, towels, sand buckets?" "Yes, Mama Sarah," the twins replied from the car. Mr. Harrison was putting the cooler in the trunk. Seeing her descend, he stopped. He took off his sunglasses and looked at her with an admiration he didn't try to hide. "You look beautiful today, Sarah," he said, with simplicity and honesty. Sarah blushed slightly, a smile illuminating her face. "Thank you, Alex. You don't look too bad yourself for an old businessman," she joked, winking at him. "Mister." Harrison laughed and closed the trunk. He approached her. He didn't touch her, but the closeness between them was charged with a soft electricity, with a promise that no longer needed words. "Ready for this family's first real vacation?" he asked. "Ready," she replied. "I've never seen the ocean, Alex. Thank you for taking us." Mr. Harrison shook his head and with a gentle movement took Sarah's hand. On her ring finger shone a ring. It wasn't an ostentatious and vulgar diamond like Victoria's. It was a simple ring, a gold band with a small emerald, elegant and discreet, symbolizing hope and rebirth. "Don't thank me," Mr. Harrison said, squeezing her hand. "You taught us to navigate when we were drowning on dry land. Seeing the ocean is the least I can do." Sarah looked at the ring on her hand. Then she looked at the children in the car who were cheerfully arguing about what song to play on the radio. "You know," Sarah said, thoughtfully. "A year ago, I walked out that door thinking my life was over. I thought God had abandoned me." "And now?" Mr. Harrison asked. "Now I know that God has a way of making things right, even when they seem to go wrong." Sarah squeezed Mr. Harrison's hand. "Sometimes, you have to lose everything to realize what's truly worthwhile." "Dad, Sarah, let's go," Noah cried from the window. "The ocean isn't going to wait for us." "Coming, you impatient ones," Mr. Harrison shouted back. He opened the passenger door for Sarah. She got in, settling into the seat that was hers by right of love and loyalty. Mr. Harrison walked around the car, sat behind the wheel, and looked in the rearview mirror at his two healthy and happy children. He looked at the woman beside him, who had brought light back into his life. He started the engine. The car glided smoothly down the cobblestone street, moving away from the mansion, passing the exact spot where a year earlier they had cried blood and tears. But the asphalt no longer held memory of the pain. It was just the path to the future. As the car rounded the corner and disappeared from sight, the street fell silent, bathed in the sun. The large, cold houses were still there, with their owners preoccupied with money and appearances. But in one of them, the largest of all, something different remained. There remained an echo of laughter, an aroma of pancakes, and the absolute certainty that money can buy a house. But only love, forgiveness, and courage can build a true home. The end.